I'm Eryn Cervantes. As Charlie said, I'm running for State Assembly in District 12. Your current representative is Damon Conley. And I'm not quite sure. There's a lot of confusion. As I'm out talking, a lot of people ask, what is District 12? So just to let you know, District 12 is all of Marin County and southern central portion of Sonoma County. So it doesn't go quite to the coast, and it doesn't quite go to Sonoma, in fact. So that is the general coverage of the district. Damon Conley is a Democrat. I am a Republican, and we are very, very different people. Happy to say that. I was raised on a farm in Calaveras County. We had all kinds of animals: horses, goats, pigs, chickens, geese. We also had a huge vegetable garden and a number of fruit trees. So I understand the hard work that goes into farming. I understand the importance of agriculture and the harm that overregulating does to those industries. So in saying that, we look at some of the things that Damon Conley is doing to regulate our farmers and growers of the various agricultural industry in the area, and it makes their job harder. It makes it harder for them to profit off of their business and grow. So I'm very much against that. And while he's over-regulating on a lot of what he does, he's also exempting certain groups from things like our groundwater. And that's just in the very sense of it is not fair. So Damon loves laws. He loves laws so much that he runs a contest out of his office called There Ought to Be a Law, where he actually solicits the public for input on ideas about different laws that they think would be a good idea. So you can imagine people sitting back having cocktails playing It Ought to Be a Law game and submitting them to Damon, and he actually takes them very seriously, and we have more laws on top of the laws he thinks that we're supposed to have. And to me, that just, the first thing I think of is police state. Yep. So I think right now he has some laws that he wants to create on e-cigarettes, on the electric bikes, on sexual harassment,
on children in school.
Yes. No, except for that, right? They get to, yeah. And the thing about what he does, I'll save you the time because it's exhausting and boring, but what he does is he actually adds a very small tweak to what is already a large body of law that already exists. So for example, the body armor law that he's very proud of and you will find on his website, that existed back in the early 2000s. What he did was, in that law, just so you know, it makes it a felony for anybody who has a criminal record to purchase body armor. And he did it on the heels of what happened in Santa Barbara and some of the other mass shootings that had happened. So what the original purpose of it was. What Damon did was add that it's a misdemeanor for people who aren't in a profession that would otherwise require that kind of equipment. The criminal part to me was good enough. Those are the people that are going to use the vests and that kind of equipment for nefarious reasons. But for somebody who, maybe it's a paintball enthusiast that wants to buy the get-up to go out and play cops and robbers out in the field, that shouldn't be a misdemeanor. So it's just, it creates restrictions that are unnecessary. and it encroaches on freedoms. So and I happen to know a little bit about freedom. So for those of you who don't know, I work at San Quentin State Prison. I have worked for the Department of Corrections since January of 1999, when I started the Basic Correctional Officer Academy in Galt. I became a correctional officer, worked at Sierra Conservation Center in Jamestown, which at the time trained inmates to be firefighters at our southern camp facilities. Now, with the closure of some of the prisons up north, they are responsible for training all firefighters. So I started my career there and promoted to sergeant after 5 years as an officer, and I loved that. I loved the leadership role that came along with that. And then I want to say in 2011 that I promoted to lieutenant, and also saw that the department was changing. And so I wanted to create a plan B for myself in case it no longer was a good fit for me. And I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and then with it always in the back of my mind that I would also get my law degree, which I did in August of 22. In the course of my career, actually it was in 2016 that a job opportunity came open at San Quentin, and I became the litigation coordinator there, which I held that position for 7 years. It coincided so well with my law studies, and I thought it would look amazing on my resume. So that brought me to San Quentin, and I fell in love with Marin County. I hope I never ever have to leave. But I also see what's happening across the bridge, and that it's creeping this way, actually coming at us from all different directions. You actually have criminals coming here specifically to commit crimes and then go back to their lairs in the East Bay and south of us. That has such an impact on quality of life that seeing that nobody was doing anything about it just got to me. So that's why I'm standing here. That's why I raised my hand and said, I think I can do this. I have some really great ideas. I understand the criminal element. I've worked with them for 25 years. I also understand the journey, the horrible, sad journey that victims go through. We had a double homicide in my family, and it was on my father's side. Actually, elderly cousin and her husband were murdered in their home in Clovis, California. I understand the permanence, and it's just an unnecessary tragedy that's forever. And I also see, especially now, and it's more and more, that victims are being carved out of the equation for as far as the whole criminal justice picture sits. So actually, since that happened, my family and I have advocated for victims, specifically of homicide. We work with Citizens Against Homicide to advocate on behalf of friends and family of murder victims. We've taken that a step further and tried doing some preventative things with domestic violence. We did a documentary called Left in the Dark that highlights the dangers that come along with domestic violence, which is almost always a precursor to murder. So we've done some good things with that. Let's see, what else? I think that pretty much captures who I am and what I'm all about, the things that I want to do as a representative of District 12. There are there's a couple more things I do want to talk about. Fiscal accountability. So I think that it just is so, the spectrum for fiscal accountability is, to me, it's endless, and it affects everything. It affects the homelessness situation, for one. So we have a homelessness situation that we're actually dumping money into, which I could support if I saw that there was an impact as a result of all of that money. We're not seeing the products of our investments as taxpayers. And when you have, much like the pharmaceutical companies, that's your business. If your business is to end homelessness and you actually achieve that, what is left of your business? So that needs to really be reworked. I think that with most organizations, they have bylaws, they have goals, and I think that we need to have accountability to that. What do you see as your success within 6 months, a year, and actually follow up on that and see whether it's worth continuing to fund those groups. The other, locally, when we talk about our budget, is the disaster that they're creating out of Highway 37. That is, they want to widen it so that then they can tear it down and lift it. It's just not, that's just not okay. They spend money because it's not their money. And it's, people have a hard time making ends meet right now. And when you see that kind of waste, it's shameful and it's not right, it's criminal actually. So those are some of the things that are high on my list. I also have a huge problem with the efforts to replace women, to infringe on women. This idea that a man can identify as a woman and find themselves in a female prison or jail. I can tell you the other day we looked at some numbers at San Quentin. The number of biological male inmates who have suddenly identified as women is shocking. I mean, it's so bad that you can take a look at the list and you know exactly why that list has grown so much. So I'd like to think it was common sense, but it doesn't seem to be so common. So anyway, that's what I'm all about. Those are the issues that are important to me and why I would love more than anything for you to get yourself, your family, your friends to vote for me. So, and if anyone has questions, I would really appreciate that too. Mary?
My husband and I were very early supporters of Damon's, and it appears as though his main focus is climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how you are differentiating yourself on that front.
So that's something else that's making a lot of money for people is climate change. I think if you look, and it also, the science of climate change is very similar to the science of COVID. Yeah. So you have these opposing factions that say, I'm right, and because I'm right, you can't possibly be, which is actually counter to science, the idea of science. So I have a huge problem with the climate crisis, and the main reason why I have a huge problem with it is because people are becoming billionaires off of it. And you can almost be assured that when somebody's making money off of something to that degree, it's never going to end. It's never going to end. We were supposed to fall off of the United States as a state. How many years ago? The ice caps were going to melt. Al Gore had all kinds of, morbid predictions for our future. They've come and gone. NASA tells us that the sea level rises like 1/10 of an inch a year. I know people who live on the bay, have lived on the bay for many, many years. The water level hasn't changed, and when it does, it's because it's of high tide or low tide. So I don't agree with those things. I think he's pandering to a group of very scared people. If you watch Project Veritas, they did an interview with a CNN executive. And they were talking about COVID, and he said, so what's the next big thing? And he said, climate change. We're going to scare everybody with climate change. And that's what's happening. So I don't know. I hope I answered your question. I don't have the same sentiments that Damon does. And let's say that in 100 years, we have some concerns about the climate. I can promise you that people who are getting ready to do their grocery shopping aren't worried about what the temperature is going to be next summer. They're worried about whether they're going to get their chores done and their errands done before the sun goes down, where they're going to go shopping. Are you going to go to the Safeway in Corte Madera, or are you going to go to the Safeway over here off of B Street? C Street, B Street. It's choices like that. So, and those are real, everyday, in-your-face issues for people. So that's my very long-winded answer to your question. Frank.
Can you briefly describe the differences between you and the other so-called Republican running for Assembly?
Yeah, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up. So about 2 weeks ago, actually about a month and a half ago, I was invited to participate in a debate. This is actually about both of them. That was hosted by COST, which is the
Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers.
Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers. From everything that I've heard of this organization, they have a very good reputation. So I was very anxious to participate in a debate because most people don't know who I am. And so as the mid-July date started approaching, I didn't hear anything from anybody, so I reached out and said, what's going on? Well, Damon doesn't want to do the debate, or he hasn't returned my calls. Okay, I'm still reaching out. I'm going to give him one last chance. So another 2 or 3 weeks goes by, I follow up again. I really want to get this debate done. And finally, about 2 weeks ago, they said Damon doesn't want to do the debate. He's not going to do the debate for the primary, but he'll do the debate for the general. And I said, well, there's 3 candidates. Damon doesn't have to do the debate. Life is full of choices. And so he took it, this person that I spoke with, Doug Kelly, took it back to the board and said, we'll do the debate with the 2 Republican candidates. Let me contact Andrew Podshadley. Andrew never answered the emails. He never answered the return phone calls. And I found out the other day that they're not going to have the debate. So here's the difference between me and both candidates. I have enough respect for the voters to stand in places like this, answer questions that I am really just winging it when I answer. It's really my core values that I'm sharing with you when I answer the questions. And I talk about things that are important to me. Those 2 either don't have the guts, they have, in Damon's case, I think it's arrogance. I think that he doesn't look at me as an issue. And I look at the other one as quite the opposite. I actually think he's afraid. Andy, you can look through Podshadley's, you can't find much on him, but what you do find is about his winery. There's not anything about his issues. In fact, when we did our debate or our roundtable with the Marin Independent Journal, he agreed with a lot of what Damon was saying. And if I didn't know who he was and what party he had signed himself up for, I would have never guessed that he was a Republican. So there are huge differences between myself and Andy, and I couldn't be more of a polar opposite from Damon.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just tell us your full name again so I know what to look for on the ballot.
Eryn with a Y, Eryn Cervantes.
Cervantes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay.
Oh, thanks. Anybody else? Any other questions? Mark?
We have 2, I think, significant events in this county which demonstrates that our justice disappearing here. We had demolishing of the statues of newly proclaimed Catholic saints right here in the center of San Rafael. And I participated in that Zoom with DA, who finally decided not to prosecute it as a hate crime, which was obviously hitting the feelings of all Catholics of this county. This is number one. Number two, when in Fairfax, people from East Bay came here and draw fascist swastika on Jewish homes. They have not been prosecuted either. What you could do if elected with restoring justice?
We have laws on the books. We have very good, solid laws that are on the books already, and we're not enforcing them. And that's our biggest problem. And then when we do enforce them, which is selectively, depending on the political climate that's associated with that. And that's what happened with the Junipero Serra statue. And it's also what's happening with the graffiti that you were talking about, is it's connected to Black Lives Matter and the Antifa faction that's infested that element. And so it's political, and it happened shortly after 2020 when it was not popular for Democratic cities to support law enforcement, and they didn't support law enforcement, and neither did our DA. And so that's unfortunate, but we do have laws on the books that need to be enforced. We have some laws on the books that need to be taken away, like Prop 47. That actually hurts what you're talking about. Prop 47 hurts. It hurts that because it makes it seem like it's not that big of a deal. And it really is. It carves at the mores of our community, what's acceptable and what's not. And it starts to desensitize people to Anderson. I gotta tell you, I don't pay that much attention anymore when I drive down Anderson, and that's not okay. It just isn't. That's not okay that people are living like that in this country. But you drive past it every single day, and it becomes it's just part of the sidewalk now. So we have to not ever let that happen. We have to insist that our laws are enforced. We have to insist you vote. You vote for people like me. You read and you vote about what the person stands for that's running for an office and make it matter. Other than that, I mean, these community organizations is a good place to start. You write letters. And as a state representative, you can put pressure on those the local community, the district office holders. So it's just that we have the wrong people in office right now. Oh, I got a little passionate about that. A little heated. Anybody else? Yeah.
So if you get into Sacramento, back to the transgender issue, we are a sanctuary state. So we are trafficking children through California to be mutilated if their parents disagree a different state. So would you work trying to get those laws?
Absolutely. I think the attack on this country's children, not to mention California's on the front lines. They raise their hand every time it's time to chip away at innocence. Anytime it's just the most, you think you can't make it up. And California's like, well, we're that state.
Hold my beer.
Yeah, watch, hold my beer. So, yeah, no, I would definitely, I hate that those things exist. There are families being torn apart because dad doesn't support this gender reaffirming business, and mom wants it, and so because he doesn't ever get to see his child. I mean, it's just not right. That is criminal also, and no, of course I would never support anything like that.
Well, they have 2 new bills, I don't know if you heard about it, where they're now going to criminalize doctors for refusing to get educated on these surgeries. Just 2 women up in Sacramento just proposed 2 bills. I mean, it's just more.
Right.
So anyway, I know we need new people like you in there to kind of fight this.
Yeah.
Because obviously I know how it works. They propose it, then it gets a committee, and then they get to vote on it.
I'm optimistic. I think there's a lot of people that have said, wait a minute. This is, what we're getting at the ballot box that's just not good enough. And so I think there's a lot of people like myself and Teef and a lot of the Central Committee candidates that have said that the status quo is no longer adequate, and it's subpar, in fact. And I think we finally have quite a few people, and it's not just California, it's all over the place, that are stepping up and saying, hold my beer. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I could throw in an easy one because you know where I'm coming from. So, as of last night, a Senator Portantino, a Democrat, proposed SB 1160, which will mandate that all gun owners have to itemize and pay insurance for every individual gun and tell their homeowners insurance that they have that. To me, that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. We have, and I'm sure Teeth is going to chime into it, so I'm not going to steal her fire on it, but we have quite a few anti-gun legislation coming down the pipeline. Where do you stand on keeping First Amendment rights?
The first time I fired a firearm, I was 6 years old, and it was a shotgun, and I about lost my balance. I am an avid supporter of the Second Amendment. I think a lot of these laws it's the best effort they have. If they can bombard the Second Amendment, that's what they're going to do. I think the Second Amendment is very solidly written. I mean, actually, the Constitution, for me, it's the Bible and the Constitution is right there next to it. So, yeah, the Second Amendment is important because without it, and if you weaken the Second Amendment, you weaken the American resolve for liberty and our freedom. So if we give an inch on that, we're giving away our country, because they'll take it in a heartbeat if we aren't armed.
Oh, definitely. If you're a student of history, you know if they take your guns, they're going to take your life next.
Right.
This one specifically is nasty because it attacks people of low income. So people of low income will not be able to defend themselves or be able to have home insurance.
Yeah.
So they're particularly nasty on top of SB2, which
Right.
is fortunately getting fought.
Well, I know they tried doing something similar to that in Santa Clara County, and that lost. They're really getting knocked down left and right by the Ninth Circuit, which is shocking, but they are. Any more questions?
I just want to say thank you for coming out of the woodwork and filling this void.
It's been amazing for me too.
You are amazing.
Thank you.
You and Teef are direct and honest, and just what the doctor ordered, if everyone could just know about.
Well, I can assure you, one of the things that I committed to myself before I committed to the campaign was that I had to be authentically me. So there's a lot of things that I might have some suggestions about how to handle a situation, but if it's not me, I can't play poker either. So it just has to be. I have to be that way, and I'm glad you see it. Thank you for that.
All right.